Hello, how are you? Welcome to Genealogy Quick Start. I'm Shamel Jordan, your host, and we have two new wonderful quick starts for you here today. But first, I just wanted to say, how are you researching? Are you researching like a lone wolf? Or are you researching in a group of people? Are you working with others? There is a huge benefit to doing research with others. I have research buddies that, sometimes you kind of fall off a little bit and they call and they tell you something new and it gets you all jazzed up. Well, today I had a friend call me to remind me about Family Search's cemetery search. Have you been to familysearch.org lately? Have you tried their cemetery search? Family Search is always doing something wonderful, and this cemetery search is amazing. I won't be showing it to you on the show today, but I just want to let you know that they have a search that pulls together find a grave, billion graves, and your tree. So if you decided not to hang out and be a part of Family Search's combined tree, then maybe you want to rethink that because there's some beautiful things that can happen. So go check that out. But anyway, today we have two new quick starts for you. One is getting over obscure place names. I don't know why I have a question mark there, but yeah, today we are going to get over obscure place names. It's not a question. The other quick start is juggling jurisdictions. Oh my goodness, when you're researching, knowing where to research is quite important. I am so happy to see you here. Please, if you are here, you know what to do. Put your name and your where you are. And if you have a genealogy group, put that in there too, because I was just talking about being a lone wolf. Don't be that lone wolf. Become a member of a genealogy group. Being a part of a genealogy group will help you to move a lot quicker in your research. So today we're talking about all this place name stuff. I want to show you some different types of books that you could get that deal with maps and some place names. So the number one book dealing with land is, and I always bring this one up, Land and Property Research by E. Wade Hone. I've never met him, but this is like the gold standard in researching United States records. Another book, which I'll show you later, I won't show you that one now, Cartographic Records at the National Archives. Yes, they have an online catalog, but it's really nice to sometimes just peruse the book. There'll be things here that you might not have noticed online, or, sometimes their catalog can be a little challenging. So it's nice to have these books. There are different map books for your location. I got this one at the Birmingham Public Library, and it's a list of 19th century maps for the state of Alabama. Um, and so you might want to check with your local library or local area to see if they have maps that tell you books that tell you where the maps are. I'm going to talk to you today about two books by William Dollar Hyde. Now I'm going to just tell you about this one. But this one is a map guide to American migration, 1735 to 1815. This is the beginning of the nation. And this is by William Dollar Hyde. It's a very interesting book. And understanding migrations can help you figure out where the heck did they go, right? Now, this is a book that was published by a wonderful genealogical society. It's called Philadelphia Maps 1682 to 1892, to 1982. And it shows townships, districts, and wards. And we'll be talking about some of that today. If you are researching Philadelphia, this was created by the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. I have one more, but I'll show you that one later. Let's see who we have here today. Hello, Judy. Nice to have you here from Chicagoland, Illinois State Genealogical Society. Hey, Paula, I definitely miss seeing you. I will be doing some stuff at the Camden County Library. Check it out. From West Defford. And hi, Valerie Ann from Philadelphia area and Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. Val, do we still have this book available that people can purchase? Definitely let me know because I should have asked you that before I showed it to everyone. Hello, Kathleen from Indiana. Let me tell you about my first trip to Indiana. When we got off the plane, there were people handing out cookies. Okay. I have never experienced that. If anything, hurry up. But there were people saying, "Welcome to Fort Wayne," and handing out cookies. I've never seen anything so cool. Never seen anything so cool. So Val, the president of the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania, has confirmed, yes, we do have the Philadelphia map. So if you have Philly ancestors, definitely check it out. Okay, we have Michael John Neill here from Illinois. Michael, I'm going to choke you. And hi, Diane Robinson from South Carolina. That's one of my research states. I can't wait to get into South Carolina. So without further ado, I want to first say Jim Byler will not be here with us today. I know it's sad. I feel sad he's not here, but he'll be back the next time. So let me bring out genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. How are you, Michael?
I'm good, Shamel. How are you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm glad you're alive and floating at the cemetery.
I'm floating at the cemetery. Yeah, that's the best way to take pictures is to be your own little drone, I guess, is the way.
So, Michael, I just shared something new about the cemetery search. Anything interesting new in genealogy or relatively new within the past 3 months? Because I think that's how long the cemetery search has been out. That might interest people.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head related to our topic.
You mean
Our
besides a
topics
new?
today.
It's not. It doesn't have to deal with our topic.
Oh,
Do you have some kind of new text?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
we got more genealogy tip of the day. Yeah, and boy, the green screen does not like this book because there must be a little bit of green in the color. Yeah, this is our 400-page. This is the more tip of the day that I've. It's on Amazon. It's on the website. You can get your own copy.
No call to actions. It's a book that might be of interest to you.
Okay, that's what you said. That's what I said. That's what I said. Uh,
Thank you. So definitely check it out. And Michael, if you want to put that link in the chat, that you could do that too.
I can do
So
that.
Michael, we have two cool kind of mappy things going on dealing with place names today and jurisdictions, but we're going to start first with um, your topic, which is getting over obscure place names. So, talk to us about this quick start.
Well, a lot of us, either in a family letter or in some other document, or when you've interviewed grandma or grandpa or whomever, and they might have given you where somebody was born or where they lived, and it might have been Chicago, it might have been St. Louis, but it might also have been a neighborhood in one of those metropolitan areas, or it wasn't a city, but it was a neighborhood, or if it was a rural area, it might have been by a vernacular, a name that the locals used, but wasn't the actual city name or the village name. And if the town is still in existence, they're easy to find. But the problem is it might not be in existence anymore. Or the neighborhood might have been kind of in flux. It might never have had fixed boundaries. Particularly in urban areas, those boundaries can kind of shift for some of those regions sometimes. And in rural areas, there might be a crossroads or a spot in the road, if you will, that the locals had for a name that doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it only existed for a generation or two. And so we're going to try to talk about some ways you can find out where those places were at. Because the thing is, if we know where they're located, then we can search for other records, or we at least can know whether we're finding the same person or not. when we look at other records that have more larger locations listed that are
So I
easier to
like how
find.
you said, it could be, like the town name of a development as opposed to the actual town name.
Right.
Because I grew up in a town called Lawnside, and we've had previous names, and some of those previous names weren't actually names of the town. They were developments or enclaves within the town. And so I think that what you're talking about will help us to learn about not just municipalities, but you said different areas within a
Yeah,
particular.
neighbor. I mean, sometimes you'll see the name of the subdivision. Sometimes you'll see those signs today, that it's the whatever subdivision or whatever. But sometimes those signs kind of go down after a while, or that what the locals called it might not have been what everybody else called it. And it might have been just an unofficial name for a neighborhood, if you will. And finding out where that's at can be difficult, but you need to make sure you're looking. If it's if it's an urban area and you have a goofy name that grandpa called something, you need to know where that was at so you know what church to look for, what schools to look for, when there's a lot to choose from, especially if it's an urban area.
Marion says she has a problem with our coal mining relative place names. When the mine closed, the town disappeared. I've heard that before. So yeah, I think Michael is going to give you some tips here, possibly to help you with that. All right. So let's get started with our quick start. I love these kind of quick starts. All right. So getting over obscure place names. Step one, pick a place.
So choose that name. I mean, that's what you've got to do to start with. Choose the name of that location. And when you're picking that place, and I'm going to be honest, I don't remember step 2 and 3, but off of my head. But in addition to that, what rough time period did you know it was in existence, or was somebody referred to it as that? Because that will help you in some of these other steps, the searching for it. Was it in the 1930s? Was it in the 1870s? Because those things are going to kind of impact where you might search to try to find out a little more specifically where that location was
That's
at.
the
And
crosshairs, place and
that's the
time.
crosshairs. And the other thing to keep in mind is we never might know precisely where it's at. You might just kind of get a general area, but that's better than nothing. It just depends on
Yes.
on the time and place, how precisely you're able to locate that location.
Okay, so we've all picked a place. Now we're going on to step two, which is a mystery to Michael. What period was this name used? That step
So
two
there
is
you
the
go.
add the
So
crosshairs.
exactly. So if you're finding, if grandma or somebody is talking about this or mentioning this place, and you think, I've never heard of that, I don't know where that is, then maybe that would be a time to, don't just say that wasn't in existence. Be a little more gentle than that. But you try to get, was it during the Depression? Was it when you were a child? Was it your parent? Whatever. Just some things that took place there that might be helpful to kind of narrow down the time period. Ask about some events that happened in that location, because those may be easier to remember than a specific year.
Yeah. Yeah. People get really tense when you're like, well, when did that happen? They're like, ugh.
Yeah, right. And
Yeah.
just
All right.
it also goes back to, when you're asking these questions, you want to be conversational, because when you're conversational, that increases the chance you get good information from the person. It's not
Yes.
an inquisition.
Yes, I was the Inquisition. I was an Inquisition. Like I had the flashing light on. I'm like, come on, Grandma, you got to remember. All right, so we have our place, we have our time period when that place name was used, and now we want to read gazetteers and books. What's a gazetteer?
A gazetteer is a dictionary of place names, whereas a map has a lot of pictures in it and is very, pictorial. What's the right word there? Has pictures. Um, image based. A gazetteer is an index or directory of places, arranged alphabetically, and then with some information about where that place was at. There may be some maps in it, but gazetteers are not maps. They're meant to be an alphabetical list. There's might be a statewide, might be countywide, might be nationwide, but those would be some things to look for that place name. In terms of books, books of place names. While I was waiting for you to let me in the room a little bit earlier, I was on worldcat.org, and
Oh,
to find books of place names, I was playing around with a few, and on worldcat.org, which is an online library card catalog nationwide, worldwide, I just put Illinois place names or Ohio place names, and books that contain that information came up. And then if you're using WorldCat, it would tell you what libraries had that, and more information about those individual books. But those would be some books you might want to look at too. Pennsylvania, whatever your state, place names to get an idea. Now, it's not going to have every place in it, but that would be a good place to start. You could also use Google, but step 3 says gazetteers and books. So we're going to talk about gazetteers and books, and those would be the two things to start with.
so WorldCat to get like where you could go to get them, but then you
Right.
could definitely like there's tons on Google Books, probably some on Internet Archives, possibly as well. All right, so we have our gazetteers, and oh, Janet has given you a shout out. You better
I
get
see
her
that.
get
I
a
see that.
recommendation from her.
I see
All
that.
right. So
Thank you.
step 4, and we're going to show you guys Michael's wonderful slides in a second. Search for the name in newspapers. Okay, talk to us about that.
Because one of these, newspapers, especially if it's a small area where they publish the weekly newspapers and the gossip columns or the correspondence columns, um, they may mention these place names in the local newspapers. And so, it might not be on Google, it might not be anywhere else, but there may be a reference to it in the gossip that so and so went to blah blah town, whatever the name of the place was, and that could give you a clue as to where it was at. Or I'm thinking of where I'm from. There's a place called Middle Creek, and now I can't remember the names, and a few other names of places that weren't places, but they were places, if that makes any sense. And that would be the headline of the column. It was the gossip from
Yes.
Yellow Creek. Well, I don't know where Yellow. I never heard of Yellow Creek. It's not in the Gazetteer. But when I look at Yellow Creek, if I trying to figure out where Yellow Creek is, and I see this is the gossip from Yellow Creek, and it's a newspaper from 1880, whatever the year was, then look at the names that are mentioned. There'll be names of people mentioned, and then find where they're living in the census, and that would give you a clue as to where Yellow Creek, or
Oh,
whatever it
very
was,
cool.
whatever it was located. But newspapers might mention those places that aren't mentioned elsewhere. It's just, they went to the Hobbin Corner and there was a party at the Hobbin Corner. There was a car crash at the Hobbin Corner, or whatever the case may be. And that may be the only reference you see to that location. But that'd be a clue as to where it was at. So newspapers are a good place. If the other finding aids are not helpful, then newspapers are a good place to do some searching for those place names. And the images go with the second session.
And so newspapers, the top newspaper places to go are newspapers.com, Genealogy
Library of
Bank,
Congress, Genealogy
Library of
Bank.
Congress.
And then I would also reach out to local libraries in the area because they might have digitized some too. But start with newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, Library of Congress. Those are the big ones where you want to start. And then local libraries might also have some digitized as well that you could.
The newspaper archive. Always forget about newspaper archive. Check that out as well. All right. And after you search the newspapers, you want to look for the name on maps.
Exactly. So, you've used a gazetteer, you've done a Google search, you've searched in some of the other places that we've talked about. Then see if you can find, you might not find it on a map, but see if you can find some of those places near it on a map to kind of get an approximate idea of where it was located. The other place you might want to reach out to that we didn't put in one of our steps would be to local genealogical societies and local libraries as well. If you know the county it was in, or the neighborhood was in Chicago or St. Louis or whatever, then reach out to a reference librarian in one of those cities and see if they have any specific, because Google searches and internet searches and all that are great, but they're not always going to solve every problem. Your reference librarian in that location could give you some more additional suggestions as well if these other approaches don't work, and you want to reach out to them and a local genealogical society as well.
And I would definitely, like, if you're not talking to the local historical genealogical societies, you are wasting time. These people live at one of the historical societies, Haddonfield Historical Society. I can walk in there. Back in the day, it's not the same now, but back in the day, I'm still very helpful now. I could just walk in there, and it was like I was walking back to the 19th, 18th century. And they basically knew, like, they were talking about the families as if they were talking about people today.
Mm-hmm.
And place names is like low hanging fruit for these people. They're going to know all the
especially
addresses.
especially somebody who grew up there and is from there. I mean, because you just, even if you've never lived there and you've researched there, you're still knowledgeable, but there may be some little things, just gaps in your knowledge because you didn't live there for the first 30 or however many years of your life. Little things you picked up and whatnot, and sources. So you do want to reach out to those um, individuals. Even if they're not related to you, they may know bits and pieces that are helpful.
It's amazing what then. Speaking of, you talked about maps. Let's take a look at some of your maps. So
This
talk to
this,
us
this
about
is one,
Bedford.
yeah. This was an 1861 map of Bedford County, Pennsylvania. This is the overview map of it. I think there's one that was a little bit more zoomed in, if I
Yes.
remember right. It doesn't look as good on the screen as it did, but that's okay. Um, but this is showing where the borders and the townships. Then there's the geographic features. There's other features, some homeowners I think that are listed here, and there are some other geographic features that are listed as well.
I
Um,
love this map.
yeah, and this was at the Library of Congress in their American Memory Collection
You
was
know
where
my
I
favorite
accessed that.
place for maps? Rumsey.
That's another one. That's another good place
All right. So we have
to look for
Bedford. I don't know
those.
why I got rid of the slide. Here we go.
Um, this was from Harford County, Maryland. This was also from the Library of Congress, but again, this was showing the election districts, I think, as well. Um, but again, it's got a few landowners. Not every landowner on this map, I don't think, is listed, but it's got a variety of geographic features, some which might have political jurisdictions and whatnot, some of which might not be in existence today, small towns and things like that. The railroad maps, that's another section of the American Memory Collection, Library of Congress. The railroad maps, those also might have place names on them as well. Railroad stops and whatnot, because the railroad stop might have had a name that only was in existence for a short period of time, and
Mhm.
that might be on a railroad map. So one of the things that you do want to do is to try, before you pinpoint your searches a lot, is to try to get a rough idea of where this place was at, even just the county or the part of the state or whatever, if it's rural, so you can look for maps of just that county or that location, and you're not going statewide. So try to get the person, if you're getting it from somebody's memory, try to get the person to narrow it down a little bit to give you a better idea of where it was at. If it's in another document or item where you've got the name of that place, see if there's any other clues, future context clues that might give you some suggestions about a little more precise area in which that was located. So then you know what maps to take a look at, what libraries to contact, and whatever, if you're having trouble finding those places. This is an old 1923 plat map, um, and it's just, again, it might show something that's no longer in existence today. Um, there's a place called the Hobbin Corner. I'm not sure if you could figure it out on this map, but no, because the father hasn't died yet. But it's because there were three houses three of the four corners, all owned by people that had the same last name, and that's why
Oh.
um, it was called the Hobbin Corner. It was not on any map. It's not in any gazetteer. Um, but I think if I did a certain newspaper search, I might find a reference to it once in a while. I know where it's at because it's where my grandmother's family was from. But that would be a good one to look for in a newspaper. That would be another one. You want to get an old timer that might remember that as time goes on. Especially when the families that caused something to have that name are gone, then after a while the name starts to fade,
Right. Right.
fade away.
And
Especially,
people.
for a lot of these informal things, we're not talking about a town or something that, is going to have a name be perpetuated a little better. But if it's a spot in the road that was called something and the people that brought that name about are gone, then the name sometimes kind of tends to fade from memory and falls out of use, which can be a problem.
Makes sense. That's why they become obscure.
This is for the next session.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. But look at as many maps as you can. I would reference the librarians, the genealogical societies. You could even look on Google Books, because Google Books has digitized county histories and that kind of material in addition to other things. And so that would be something to search for, that place name in Google Books, because maybe there's a historical, because those are out of copyright materials. And if it's something a little bit older, then that would be another good place just to put that place name in quotes. I could put Hobbin Corner in quotes on books.google.com and see what comes up. Probably not much in my case, but in other cases that would be someplace else to take a look for, would be at Google Books, in addition to the other places that we talked about.
So, Michael, you talked about landowners being on the map and not all of them being there. Was there
On
like
those,
a threshold?
was there what?
A threshold of like, amount of property before you ended up on a map?
Well, the last one that we saw, every landowner is listed except for it's farm landowners, not in the cities and the towns, but they're in the rural areas. All of them are listed. In the ones that are a little bit earlier, the houses and who lives there are listed, but those aren't what we call plat maps where the parcels are drawn out. The last one that we saw was what we call a plat book, where the parcels are drawn out with the acreages. The ones that were a little bit earlier, and it's more difficult, the first two that you showed was Harford County, Maryland, and Bedford County, Pennsylvania. Those are in, heaven forbid, meets and bound states where they've never heard of a right angle. And it's, in terms of, I'm laughing about that, but to make a plat book with the properties accurately parceled out would have been extremely time consuming, because they would have all had to have been drawn out accurately, which is difficult for a whole county in a meets and bounds state. But when you get further west, where we've got the rectangular survey system and whatnot, it's a little bit easier to make a plat book of those landowners. Not that every parcel is a square or a rectangle, but enough of them are to make it easier to draw those out. So that's probably the main reason why in certain areas they don't map out the parcels, and in others they do.
So for the plat map, I found mine in the tax office. Where did you find yours?
These were published. Libraries might have them, historical societies, genealogical societies will have them. The tax office may have some kind of plat books, assessor's office, a title firm may have some of these records in some locations. But the illustrations that we saw, these were in the library, county. Sometimes the courthouse will have a copy of those. And how often they were printed kind of varies from one location to another. I mean, in most areas, they're still printed today not for genealogists, but for other reasons.
In my county in Alabama, they were these huge giant books, and they had them they had a whole bunch of them, and they're not available anywhere that I know of. I haven't seen anyone.
Those would be, those are at the courthouse. Those serve a different purpose, because sometimes they use those for tax purposes and to keep track of everything and whatnot. And those aren't published form. But the ones that we saw, that one from 1923, that landowner's book, that was so, because the land records are public information. First of all, who owns something is public information, so that's not a problem.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Let's read your steps. I love this quick start. I could talk to you about this forever. Let's talk about getting over obscure place names. Step 1, pick a place. Step 2, what time period was the name used? Step 3, read gazetteers and books. Step 4, search for the name in newspapers. Step 5, look for um, name on maps. Step 6, reach out to the locals. Please reach out to the locals. Do not just research as a lone wolf. So give me one. Oops, hold on. Uh-oh. Am I frozen? Can you hear me? Oh. All right, give me 1 second to split the show. I think I'm stuck, Michael. What is going on? Give me 1 second. I don't know what's happening. I'm clicking, but I can't go on. Let me read. Oh, there we are. We're on, but not like we want to. Yeah, I'm not here. Oh, there I am. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. 1 second. All right. So, welcome back to the second quick start, which I'm going to do, and Michael is going to help me out. And so, let's bring Michael on. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Um, yes, thank you all for saying you could hear me. All right. Where's Michael? Let's bring my buddy back.
I have my green screen pulled up this time. I just realized it wasn't up for the other.
Yes, I heard the bumping and scraping.
That's what was going on, and that's why the image now looks a little better behind me than it did before.
No, it's totally better. Yeah. All right, so the quick start that I chose for today is juggling jurisdictions. When you're researching your place, like Michael just went through with like place names, it's important to know the name, but also to understand the different levels of jurisdictions and the boundaries. So today I'm going to share with you how to juggle jurisdictions. So step 1 is to understand the levels of jurisdiction. So in general for us, I would say most people would have like the federal government, followed by the state government, followed by the county government, followed by the town government. But Michael, there are other places that are, they're not that simple. I know Louisiana has parishes, which are similar to counties. What other types of different levels might there be?
Well, if you cross the pond, it's a whole different ball game, and we're not going to have that discussion. What I would suggest to people is if you start your research in Ireland or England or Germany or wherever the case may be, learn about the different levels of jurisdiction and how records were kept and what the lines are, and where births and deaths and marriages and all those things are recorded, because it's different than it is on this side of the pond. So that's just kind of our general warning about that. In some parts of the United States, there are townships, and townships can serve a governmental purpose. There may be some records at the township level, not too many. There are certain states where where there are independent cities, and
yes. What's up? Okay, so Michael, are there any other states that have these? Because it seems like Virginia has the most.
Virginia has the most independent cities, and the other thing is there are some states in New England and New York where you've got to keep, are there some towns that have their own records or maybe have a town historian, and you want to keep in mind those differences. But Virginia, it affects the court structure and where the courts are at, what court might have heard the case, and where the records are recorded. Was it in the independent city or was it in the outlying, the outlying county? In other states, there'll be cities and counties, but if you're in the city, it's a county court. It isn't a city court. But if the city is independent, then there will be a separate court and those kinds of things. And you want to keep that in mind. That's we've mentioned before about reaching out to the locals and learning about the local area. This is another reason why you've got to do that, so you're familiar with. Is there some nuance in this state that is different from other states? It also goes back to the name of the court that would hear a case. That's different from one state to the other. We want to be, always want to be cognizant of that. But the different jurisdictions matter. Sometimes with church records, where were the parish boundaries? Could you attend? Did you have to attend the nearest church in the denomination, or could you go to one a little bit further away? Sometimes that makes a difference. Sometimes it doesn't. But those are all things that you want to be aware of. And when the boundaries were changing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those changing boundaries.
And and the other thing is, even if there's not records at that jurisdiction, like even though most of the United States we have townships, there aren't a lot of records at the township level. But the thing is, knowing the township is helpful for the birth, especially in rural areas. A birth or death certificate might have the township listed, so you're going to want to know where that's at. Census records are organized by township, so if you're doing a manual search, you're going to have to know the township. And like Kathy mentioned, there in some cities in the and she's mentioning in Ohio, there might be a municipal or a city court that hears some things,
different things. Yes,
county court might hear other things. And as a last thing before we go to the next step, in some places there might be a justice of the peace. Back when we had justices of the peace, in a lot of places, that might have been at a township level, and he might have heard minor court cases.
Yes.
If the money was under a certain amount or it wasn't a major crime. The township justice of the peace heard the case first.
Yes.
So that's
and the justice of the peace wasn't always a degreed, like a lawyer or something. They could have just been a prominent person in the town.
Right. That was respected enough to get the job. Yeah.
All right. That's step one. So we kind of get the levels, and records are at each level. So make sure you're checking those. Step two is to learn about changing county boundaries. And I'm going to share with you some places. This is one of my favorite places to learn about them for the census, because this is where I get really tricked up, is the map guide for U.S. Federal Census. And guess who it is? Our buddy, two Williams, Thorndale and Dollarhide. Have you ever met Dollarhide? Does he speak, like give presentations and stuff?
I don't think he does like he used to.
Okay. I think I missed his time period. And we have some other places I'm going to share you. The most famous one is the Newberry Library's Atlas of Historical Counties and Boundaries. That's fabulous. So I'm going to show you that in a second. So once we understand the changing boundaries, we want to learn about, of the county, we want to learn about the changing town and township boundaries. This is where it can get really, really difficult. I looked up in that New Jersey, and I think probably most states have this. They have a book that talks about the civil boundaries. Do you think that most states have that, Michael?
Somewhere. It's just a question of finding it and getting it. Yeah, and the problem is some of these change. The other thing which we haven't mentioned is there could be some towns that are in two counties or in two townships.
Oh,
and that could affect, that could affect the records, where records are at. So,
that is definitely painful. A town that's in two counties. Like, couldn't they have figured that out? I mean, seriously.
Well, that's not quite how that works, but and there's some towns that are in more than one state. It depends on the.
Wait, what?
Well, I won't say in more than one state, but you got to make sure you know which state they're living in. Is it Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri?
Oh, yeah.
They're different. They're different towns. But they're right. They're right adjacent to each other. So you want to make sure.
Well, in New Jersey, we have like many towns we have the same town name in multiple towns have the same name. Mm-hmm. And it's insane. They might spell it a little different, but that is really annoying.
the other side of that too is that you'll have a town that in a state that is not in the county of the same name, which is people confuse that.
Mm,
You know, like Des Moines, Iowa is not in Des Moines County, Iowa.
right, right.
That's just there's lots. Don't post those in the chat, please. There's a lot of those examples. Just remember that just because they have a town and a county doesn't mean the town is in the county. It
Right.
doesn't have to be.
So after you learn that, then you want to understand jurisdictions in state and federal versus federal land. And Michael has, I kind of shared his graphic earlier, but we're going to look at what that looks like. And then the last thing is to create a timeline so that you don't have to keep thinking about this. And I'm going to show you that stuff now. So we talked about William Dollarhyde's book, and excuse me, Thorndale and Dollarhyde. And so I think I did put some examples. So for New Jersey, this shows the changing boundaries. The black county lines are for during this time period that they're like 1790. Then the white lines are the current county boundaries. And what I love about this is this book is for us, for genealogists. And at the bottom, it lets us know, hey, you're not going to get a census for New Jersey for 1790 to 1820. But when you get to 1830, and if you look through all the pages, there are census records that are extant for all the counties. And so this is 1790 to 1820. Then there's a map for 1830, 1840. And then it goes by each census year. And like my little county, Camden County, it doesn't become what it is today until 1880. So before that, I might need to look in other counties. So this gives me an idea of what to look at for the counties. And this is the love of every genealogist. We must all know this one. It's the Atlas of Historic County Boundaries. Check that out. And they have lots of cool stuff out there. They have state data. They also have a cool interactive map for your state, as well as an index of counties and its equivalents, like the independent cities, and then a chronology, as well as individual county chronologies, which is really nice. What I really love is this cool map, in that you can choose a date on the left-hand side, and the map will change to reflect what the counties look like at that time period. And you can select your county, and it will give you a pop-up that'll show you the details right there about the county. Oops, I did not mean to do that. I'm having fun today with myself. All right. I didn't mean to do that either. So the other thing with Michael, did you have anything you wanted to say about changing boundaries?
I popped the website that you're talking about in the chat. I'm not.
Oh, fantastic.
I
Thank
tried.
you.
I tried to do that. Um, sometimes the boundary changes were significant. They might be large, or a new county might be carved out from one county or several counties. Other times the boundary, it could just be a tweaking.
Yes.
I know the one example I use quite a bit is a county in Kentucky that the border between two counties, for years it was an arbitrary straight line, which why you would draw a straight line in Kentucky is beyond me, but they tried to do that. And then they changed it about 15 years later to go along with the creek, which made more sense. And it changed maybe, I don't know, 1,000 acres, which really isn't all that much. But it moved a few people's property from one to the other. But that would be documented on this website. But the point I was trying to make was not all of those changes are huge and significant. They're tweaking of the lines.
And talking about tweaking of lines, this is hysterical. I have never heard of this. Diane is telling us that many years ago, the government discovered the line between North Carolina and South Carolina was wrong, so they redrew it. There are several houses that moved states because they were located on the other side of the new line. That is very interesting. And we know you know that because you studied it, right, Diane? Very cool. Very cool. All right, let's look at the chronologies. These chronologies are very helpful. So I know that for the town that I'm researching, which is Lawnside, it started out in Camden County, but and that's what 1844, and before that it was Gloucester. So by reading this, I can get some ideas. It looks kind of boring, but check it out, and it will help you to understand those boundaries. This is the Book of New Jersey, which is just amazing. Tells you the civil boundaries, and it's available on the New Jersey State Archives website as well as other places. But I would definitely check your state archives website to see if there's a comparable book for your locations. So let me show you. This is the cool map that they have in there, and the green lines are the larger, like older, like shows you how it looked back in the day. And then the black lines are showing you the different towns. And if you locate your town, so I located Lawnside in the list because they'll give you the county, and then it'll give you the list of towns. And so here it's telling that 1926 is when it was created, and it was created from Center Township and Barrington. And this gives you the number of where Lawnside shows up on the map. Then we know that it came from Center Township, so then I looked for Center Township, and in here it tells us that Center Township began in 1855, and it was formed from Union Township. And again, it tells you the numbers to see that on the map. So now I know that Lawnside was a part of Center Township. Then it was a part of Union Township. So now let's look at Union Township. And here we have that Union Township in 1831 was formed from Gloucester County, formed in Gloucester County. So we've just changed counties. From Gloucester Township and Gloucestertown Township. Like, I don't know why that makes any sense, but that's what it was formed from. So I was getting really hung up on, Gloucester Township versus Gloucestertown. In the census, it was just really challenging. And so I didn't know whether Lawnside came from Gloucester County, Gloucester Township or Gloucestertown Township. Because right now I just know it's part of Union. But if I want to go beyond 1831 back in time, I need to know which one this is in. So I went to the Gloucester County Historical Society, and I looked in the freeholders records. And they have what you call road returns. And let me make this bigger. And so this is a road return, and the freeholders are like the county government in New Jersey, and they might have other names in other places, but they're responsible for the roads in the county. And they requested that a surveyor go out and provide the boundaries for Gloucester Township and Township and Newton Township. And so here you are in 1831. We have the line. And the only way that I know, just by looking at this map, where Lawnside is because, one, I know that Lawnside used to be called Snow Hill. And that drew me to this map instantly. That's the Snow Hill Meeting House, which was a church. And I know this is the road that they lived, that it was off of. And so now I know that it was actually in Gloucester Township, not Gloucestertown Township. Road returns. Michael, do you guys have road returns in your area?
No, we usually don't, but there might be survey plats and other things like that that might um, explain some of these things in a similar way. The thing person might want to keep in mind that there was probably some legal distinction between a town and a township, most likely in terms of what governmental responsibilities each one had. You know, in some states, every part of the state is in a town. You may also be in a county, but every part of the state, there's no land that's not in a town. Whereas in other parts of the United States, like where I'm from, there's lots of areas there's towns, but there's lots of places that is not in a town. It's just out in the county. Every place would be in a
So
township.
wait a minute. I don't understand. If they mail you to your name, your street, to the county and the
No,
state?
to the town.
Oh, I thought you said it wasn't in a town.
It's not, well, like where I grew up. I did not grow up in town. Didn't live in town. I lived out in the country. It was not in that part of town. But that's your mailing address, which is a whole different item from your city. I didn't live in the city, but that town was part of my mailing address.
Okay.
That's a little different nuance there, because that's how the mail is being delivered, which is different from
Oh my goodness. We should talk about that really quickly,
No.
about jurisdictions. That is a fantastic one, because the post office is a total different thing.
It's a total different item from the others. You know, it's like where I grew up. Who do you call if there's a fire? And that, is it the town or is it the county? Usually, it just kind of depends on. Things are different today than when I grew up. But there was a time, if you weren't in town, you couldn't call the town. You had to call somebody else because of where you lived. Who had responsibility for your location.
And so where I live at, probably like a 50-mile radius or more, everything was like Haddonfield, PO, like back in the day. Everybody didn't live in Haddonfield. It was just, that was the post office. So thank you for bringing that up, Michael. That's a pretty important distinction, because that can really, especially if you're new at genealogy, really mess you up.
Confuse people. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So the other thing is, what was the last step? So those were the road returns. And they also had like a textual write-up for it too. I didn't put that on there, but those are great. And I do not think that those are digitized. I have not seen those digitized anywhere. They're a part of the county records. And the last thing that I suggested, after you pull all this stuff together, you don't want to have to keep going back and remembering, is to create a timeline. So this is an example of the timeline that I created out of all the stuff that we just went through. Here is Lawnside starting in 1926. It was in Camden County. And then in 1907, it was in Center Township, which included these other towns, all of these other towns. And then in 1855, we remember Center Township was there, but it was called Snow Hill at that time. And then in 1844, it was in Camden County. That's when Camden County actually started, but it was now in Union Township. So if I'm looking through the census, I remember looking through the census trying to find Center Township. It's not going to be there in 1850. It's going to be Union Township. And so then 1831, Union Township starts, but it's in Gloucester County at this time. And if you keep going back in time, we just saw the road return. It showed us Gloucester Township. And if you keep going back, at one time we were East Jersey, West Jersey. And before that, it was, I don't even know what it was yet. And before Gloucester County, it was Burlington County. And so this is a nice reference that I can use. Sorry, the bottom part is cut off. At any time when I get hung up on which place to go and look at the records. So how do you keep track of your jurisdictions, Michael?
Well, it would be similar to that. I tend to use maps. You could, if you've got them where you can pull them up, the rest of the maps that we didn't talk about, earlier, you can pull those up, and we
Oh,
probably
yes,
have
yes,
time.
yes.
Yeah, we can
Let
talk
me
about
get
those
them.
really, uh, really quickly here.
I think this one is it. Nope. Give me 1 second to get back to it. That was the township range map.
Yep, there's several of those. Yeah,
Okay, there we go. There we go.
these are okay. The Adams County part doesn't need to be on there, but these are congressional townships, and this was a surveying mechanism back when the Ohio Territory and points west, for the most part, were surveyed. There was the attempt to lay a grid on the earth, and these squares that you see in theory are all 6 miles on a side, 36 square miles, and they're based on baselines that run east and west and meridians that run north and south. And the congressional townships were a surveying mechanism to start surveying property. And then they're broken up into much smaller squares, sections, and whatnot. If you move on to the next map,
Was it the next one or the back one? This one?
that one, that's a good
Oh,
one.
yay.
That one will work too. We'll just talk, whatever comes up, we'll talk about it. Now, the red lines are the congressional townships. There's 3 congressional townships on this map. They're all 1 north, one is 8 west, one is 9 west, and oh fudge, that should be 10 west. I see a typo there, but they're 8, 9, and 10 as you go further west. But the yellow, but those are congressional townships, which are a surveying mechanism. Then there's civil townships, which keeps your roads clean and deals with that kind of stuff, and a few other things. Those are yellow lines on this map, and there's only 2 townships on here.
Oh.
And there's one, you can see it's called Mendon on the right. It's about a quarter of that. You see the yellow lines there that break that up. And then the rest of it, all the way from that one line all the way to the Mississippi, is Ursa Township. And they took sometimes a congressional township and a civil township will have the exact same borders. But this is a great example where the congressional townships, which are a surveying mechanism with the 36 sections, if you're familiar with that, are different from the civil townships.
Okay, so I need to help myself understand what you're saying when you're saying congressional. So so townships, we were just talking about like jurisdictions for townships, like this would be on your postal thing when you get mail. But these township range would be more on
Surveying,
deed descriptions.
deeds on land descriptions, right?
And census in rural for my ancestors in
rural, it would be
1870. It was on the top of the census page.
Was it the township? Was it the range and section numbers, or was it the
Yes.
township name? Yeah.
No, it was
Because
the range.
sometimes they would put those, especially if the townships hadn't been named yet, they might put the survey numbers
Yeah.
On the census. And then when civil townships were more of a thing, then the civil township name would have been used. But there's the survey townships, which are the land description based, basically, and then there's civil townships, which are governmental based. But this is a great example of where those borders are not always contiguous, as you can see here. And if you jump to one of the others real quick, I know we're getting close on.
I didn't know we had another one.
Go back. There we go. Here's a great one. This is Prairie Township, and it's the 6 miles on a side, but this is where settlement and population can kind of change things. What they did, you see on the right, there's a hunk taken out.
Yes.
That's not because there's some weirdly shaped river there or some secret government depository.
Bunker.
It's because there's a town right there, the county seat. And it was partially in this township and partially in the adjacent township. And what they decided to do at some point was they took that part of Prairie Township and dropped it over into the township on the right, or on the left, which was on the right, which was Carthage Township.
Thank you,
Congressional
Michael.
Township was a full square, but the civil township was a hunk taken out.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We are going to read the steps for, if it comes up, maybe. I don't know. Oh, there we go. 4, it's going to happen. It's happening. Juggling jurisdictions. Step 1, understand the levels. Step 2, learn about the changing county boundaries. Step 3, learn about the changing town and township boundaries. Number 4, understand jurisdictions in a state versus federal land. And step 5 is to create a timeline. We have to go immediately. I am so happy to have done this, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Go juggle your jurisdictions and get to the bottom of those obscure place names. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.